Imagine a world without the Amazon rainforest, a world without its lush canopy, its vibrant biodiversity, its life-giving rivers. The Amazon is the world's largest rainforest, covering around 40% of the South American continent alone. That's spanning 6.9 million square kilometers. That equates to 2.27 million square miles. This means that the Amazon rainforest is approximately over half the size of the USA, and 17% of the Amazon rainforest is gone. That equates to something bigger than the state of Texas, and that's all been happening within the last 60 years. It's hard to fathom a massive amount of forest gone. Yet this is the reality we face if, together, we don't take action to protect this vital ecosystem. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Leila Salazar Lopez, the Executive Director of Amazon Watch, an organization dedicated to safeguarding the Amazon and its inhabitants, who are the Indigenous people. Leila is a passionate advocate for environmental justice and a tireless champion of Indigenous rights. She's on the front lines of the fight to protect the Amazon, and her insights are invaluable to anyone who cares about the future of our planet. We invite you to dive into Leila's world, learn about the challenges faced by the Amazon and its people, and discover how we can all contribute to its preservation. Get ready to be inspired, empowered, and a little shocked by the realities of the Amazon crisis. This is GoodViral, and you're about to hear a story that will change your perspective on the Amazon and our role in protecting it. Thank you for listening to the GoodViral podcast, and welcome to the conversation.
Can you start us off by sort of telling us about the heart and the mission of your organization?
My name is Leila Salazar Lopez, and I am Chicana Latina from California. My family's from Mexico, and I'm calling in from San Francisco Bay Area, or also known as the Ohlone People's Territory, their original territory, which is now known as the San Francisco Bay Area. So I just want to first let you all know where I'm at. I'm sure, there's people from all over the world listening. So hello to all of you. And I am the executive director of Amazon Watch, which is a nonprofit organization based in the Bay Area, but international as well. We were founded in 1996 with the mission of protecting and defending the Amazon rainforest and our climate in solidarity with Indigenous peoples. That's our mission. And really, 25 years ago, that mission was critical. Seeing how the destruction of the Amazon rainforest was increasing. At that time, I'll age and date myself, I guess I'll say, but at that time we would watch National Geographic. We would read news articles and hear about the fires in the rainforest or the deforestation of hardwoods from the Amazon. And that in and of itself was horrible and shocking. When I first went to the Amazon rainforest in 1995 and saw my first oil spill, I couldn't believe that there was even oil in the Amazon. I couldn't believe that there was, that these resources, the blood of Mother Earth, as the Indigenous people call the oil, was being extracted in this way and drilled and dumped in the way that it was. This was 25 years ago. Unfortunately, now it's even worse. And so our work right now is more critical than ever. And it's compounded. Why? Because, at that time, scientists used to say that the tipping point of the Amazon, so the point of ecological collapse of the Amazon rainforest, would be when deforestation and degradation of the forest would reach about 50%. But now that has been greatly reduced. Now the scientists are saying at 20, 25%, deforestation and degradation, the Amazon can reach a tipping point. And unfortunately, because of the deforestation, because of the degradation of the land and the forests, by industrial development, by oil extraction, by mining, by deforestation, and whether it's legal or illegal, by many different threats, the Amazon rainforest is now at a tipping point. So when we used to think, oh, the tipping point could be near, we need to do something to stop the destruction of the Amazon rainforest and Indigenous peoples' territories. Unfortunately, it's a lot closer than we think. And, why is this important? Why is this important to the listeners and to the world? Well, you all probably know that the Amazon rainforest is the largest and most biodiverse tropical rainforest on our planet. It is comparable to the size of the continental United States. That's how big it is. And so there's billions of trees in the Amazon rainforest, but as each tree falls and each forested area falls, that reduces rainfall around our planet. It reduces rainfall not only in the Amazon, but it reduces rainfall across the continent of South America, and even reduces rainfall and snowpack as far north as North America, right here in California. Our rainfall and snowpack is dependent on the weather system created by the Amazon rainforest. So it's not a stretch to say the deforestation of the Amazon, the destruction of the Amazon, is directly related to our drought, our climate crises that we're facing right now around the world. So we're all concerned about the climate, and we want climate justice. And to do that, we need to protect the forests. And to protect the forests, we need to stand with the peoples who have been protecting the forests and defending the forests for thousands of years. And those are the Indigenous peoples. And also the traditional peoples who have been living in the forests for hundreds of years and decades. So we stand with the Indigenous peoples, the traditional peoples, and the frontline communities who are defending their forests, not only for themselves, but for all of us.
One thing that really put into perspective for me, and perhaps for our audience and listeners here, is when you said the rainforest is roughly the size of the United States. And then you go on to say that 25% of that being, taken away is the tipping point. And so I just imagined 25% of the United States being taken away, and I was like, that is a huge amount of landmass. And so just kind of wanted to put that out there for our listeners to kind of put this into their own imagination of what that really looks like and how that really is a huge scar on the rest of the world. And here in Colorado, in the United States, we're a source of water for a lot of states, including California. We actually ship a lot of our water, well, however they do that, but they divert a lot of water to California. And even our snowfall has been greatly impacted due to the climate issues and obviously from the rainforest deforestation. So that put a lot of perspective in my mind, because we had crazy fires just 2 years ago that wiped out huge amounts of communities, Indigenous land as well, national forests, you name it. And that could have been prevented to a degree, at least, if we had not done what we have been doing to the rainforest. And so I kind of want to shift gears a little bit to you specifically, as so we can relate a little bit more to our audience and our listeners, as to why did you decide to join this program and this organization? What drew the call for you to join this specifically, and what transformations have you seen while being involved in it?
What drew me to the Amazon, and then eventually to Amazon Watch, and this being my life path to work as a defender of the Amazon and Indigenous rights, started with a high school Earth Day presentation. When was this? 1991 was we had a guest speaker at our high school that gave a slideshow about the Amazon rainforest. And that was the first time I had seen anything like that. I mean, I grew up in Southern California. My family would go on road trips. We would go camping. We traveled to Yosemite National Park. And so I'd seen big trees, but had never seen anything like the photos of the massive kapok trees and the monkeys, and just so I think that probably resonates with a lot of people, right? Like seeing the tropical rainforest, seeing these images of this majestic and immense forest. And so I saw that slideshow and I was like, one day I want to go there. And I asked Mike McColm, who was the founder of the Hatun Sacha Biological Station in Ecuador. I said, can I volunteer there? And he said, we have a volunteer program. You should come. You're welcome to come. And so a few years later, when I was a university student, I had to do an internship, and I said, I'm going to the Amazon. This is what I've wanted to do. I want to go. I had heard about the deforestation in the Amazons, and I heard that the volunteer program focused on reforestation and also studying medicinal plants. And that was initially my interest, was reforestation and studying the plants of the Amazon. And I did that. And that was one of the best experiences of my life. It was a life-changing moment to be able to walk in the forest for 3 months with Indigenous peoples and have them point out every plant, its property, its name, its scientific name, its local name, was just breathtaking. And I think it took me back to things that my grandmother had said, and done when I was a child, and she would, show us plants on walks, and plants we could use for different medicines and to eat. And it reminded me of my grandmother, but at a exponential level. These people were walking libraries and are. And that was this opening of, what my grandmother had said when we were children. She'd always said, don't ever forget that you're Aztec, she would say to us. And when we were children, we just relied on what our grandmother showed us and taught us. But what she was really saying is, don't forget about the Indigenous ways. Don't forget about the Indigenous knowledge. And that was this moment of, wow, they are the ones. They are the ones who have been protecting. These are the people who have the knowledge, and they also need to be protected and defended. And that became kind of the connection to working with Indigenous peoples. But then also I saw an oil spill, a massive oil spill on my way home. And that seeing the oil gush out of the Trans-Ecuadorian pipeline with no immediate response really ignited a fire in my belly as an activist to want to do something. And I just couldn't believe that this was happening. And so I started to ask the questions, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Why isn't anybody doing anything about this? And, there were, of course, obviously the Indigenous peoples for decades had been defending their territories and warning about the threats of oil development. on their lands. I'd learned that Texaco had entered the Ecuadorian Amazon in the early 1960s and gotten free rein to drill and dump on Indigenous people's lands without their consent. It is what we now call the Rainforest Chernobyl. What Texaco did in Ecuador was completely egregious, disrespectful of both the Indigenous people's lands, their human rights, and the laws and the rights of nature, because they basically saw the Amazon rainforest and northern Ecuadorian Amazon as free rein to drill and dump, and the results of that oil development still show today. The results of that oil development set a precedent for how oil development should be done in other countries, and now have also set a precedent on what we are trying to prevent. Right? We've seen what Texaco, now Chevron, did in the Ecuadorian Amazon. We saw what Occidental Petroleum did in the Peruvian Amazon. We've seen what oil and extractive projects have done across the Amazon rainforest, and it cannot expand and it cannot continue. And that's why we say keep it in the ground. That's why we say no further extraction on Indigenous lands, no further extraction in the Amazon. So, just to fast forward, at that time, I didn't know about Amazon Watch. Amazon Watch didn't actually exist yet when I first started going to the Amazon, but I knew that I wanted to dedicate my life for justice for the people who were wronged and harmed from this destructive industry. And then also work for justice, work for corporate accountability, but also to work for the protection, ultimately to work for the protection of the Amazon rainforest. Because I think ultimately when we, get fire in our belly, or we believe strongly at something, it's because we also love something. We also respect something. And for me, it was the love and respect for the forest and for the people who defend the forest. And so in 2002, I had the opportunity to join Amazon Watch as a campaigner to start a campaign to hold Chevron accountable. And I very proud of the work that we did initially to, mobilize the, local, national, international community and amplify what the voices of the affected peoples, and then also put the pressure on Chevron. And ultimately, in 2011, Chevron was found guilty. Chevron was found guilty of their destruction of the Ecuadorian Amazon, and charged with a fine of $9 billion, but they have yet to pay it. They are still fighting. They're fighting not only the ruling, but they're fighting the people who defend that ruling and the people who are affected, as we've seen with the case against Stephen Donziger. They're one of the human rights lawyers defending the Indigenous and Campesino communities in Ecuador. So I know that's a long way of saying how did I get involved, but that's the story is basically that traveling down there, and I guess having that experience that summer as a student gave me the love and respect and appreciation for the forest and peoples, and I've been committed ever since.
I find this so cool because a lot of people in general, it's just what they don't know, right? And I totally grew up in the era of printed National Geographic and reading those as a kid and stuff like that. And but then growing up, you could say, seeing more of these documentaries of on the ground of what's going on, right? Where you have oil drilling or oil spills and deforestation and et cetera, and everything that you mentioned in there, you start to learn what's really going on behind the scenes when you fill up a tank of gas. And you really start to see my choices have helped affect this, but I didn't know. And I know now. So what I choose from here is with knowledge.
I'm thinking because in those days, obviously what you saw with your own eyes, you felt a connection to the people, to the forest itself. But also in your lifetime, which is a relatively short period of time when we really look at the bigger picture, you've observed personally how the urgency has just increased and increased and increased. And of course, the expression that people have heard is that the Amazon is the lungs of the planet. So important for so many things, like you were talking about, for the climate, and also for the absorption of carbon dioxide, the production of oxygen, and just many, many things. And I know that just to draw this into the conversation for our listeners is that the people that are living there are fighting to protect it, but also, for all of us, it's extremely important. The biodiversity, the animals, the insects, everything about the forest is important. Of course, protecting the people is one of the most relevant ways to actually be able to accomplish something and get something done. But I think the problem is just, and this mentality goes back to like early European colonization, where you've got the idea that these people are just poor, basic people that don't really matter, and so these big corporations go in and or just people go in with the idea of, hey, we can just take this because there's plenty of it and there's no consequence, there's no problem. It's like when I was a kid, I'm about 50 years old now, so when I was a kid, we thought, that air was unlimited, that the ocean was unlimited, right? And it's amazing that in my lifetime we've not only seen that limit has been pushed, but now that limit is pushed so hard with air and the ocean and everything else that now it's becoming an issue of survival for the human species and thousands, of course, of other animal species and perhaps hundreds of thousands of species in general. So it's so you've seen that in your lifetime, and so I hats off to you and the work that you're doing. I struggle a little bit listening because it's my heart is a little bit broken, because I feel like on one hand, it's beautiful hearing the work that you guys are doing, but on the other hand, I also feel like there really needs to be like a global effort, because without that, and so this is maybe if you can share with us some of the results and the direct impact that you're seeing today with some of the activities that you're doing. Then maybe it'll inspire people to sort of step forward and become more involved and realize, that this is something that is not just happening in some distant land, but it's affecting every single person everywhere they live in the planet, right?
Sure. Yeah. A lot of people ask me sometimes, it's like, the news is so bad. Like, how do you just keep doing this every day? And, it is something that, every single morning, I get up and I do this because I know so much is at stake. I have children, and, we were at home with the COVID pandemic while there was wildfires raging across California, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, when the sky was orange. And, that October 2020, I think was a multiple crisis moment that I really, when I think of, could it get any worse? That was one of those days when you're like, wow, like this is not the future that I want for my children. We have to do everything possible in our power to turn this around. And whether that's the wildfires on the West Coast or the intentional fires in the Amazon rainforest, because the fires in the Amazon are not wildfires. They are intentionally set. And that is so sad to actually say. But that's the reality. The reality is that the fires that raged across the Amazon rainforest in August 2019, that's when the world kind of awoke to, what? The Amazon rainforest is on fire? And we had been saying the Amazon rainforest is on fire for many years before before those fires happened.
And is this for grazing land? Is that what the intention was?
Yeah. So, why did it all of a sudden become like headline news around the world that the Amazon was on fire? Because it was a result of intentional fire days that were encouraged by the Brazilian government, that were encouraged by the Jair Bolsonaro administration. Bolsonaro is the president of Brazil, has been for the last 3.5 years. The moment he took office, he gutted the environmental agency, gutted the Indigenous Peoples Agency, replaced them with pro-mining, pro-development administrators, and encouraged the burning of the rainforest and Indigenous people's lands without their consent, of course, to make way for industrial agribusiness, to make way for cattle, to make way for soy. And so one thing that you can all do is not support those industries, not support any industries that are connected to the destruction of the Amazon rainforest, whether that be Brazilian beef or soy or minerals or logs, wood, or oil. And how do you know? How do you know if it's from Brazil or if it's from the Western Amazon? How do you know? Well, it's hard to tell. I'll just say that. But a couple of things that we've been doing to encourage people to respond and take action. Immediately after the fires, we pointed to a report that we had released called Complicity in Destruction. And it was a report that we released a few months before the fires of 2019 to basically expose both the Brazilian government and its backers, the Brazilian government, the corporations, and the financial backers of these corporations who are incentivizing the destruction of the Amazon, who are funding and fueling the destruction of the Amazon rainforest. And so we're talking about agribusiness companies like Cargill and ADM and Bunge. We're talking about, and JBS. We're talking about banks and asset managers like BlackRock and Vanguard, and banks like Chase and Citigroup and Bank of America. These companies fund the destruction of the Amazon. They fund mining, oil exploration, oil operations. Citibank is the biggest investor in Amazon crude. And when I talk about Amazon crude, I'm talking about the oil from the Amazon, the oil that I saw spill and being dumped into the Ecuadorian Amazon. Unfortunately, oil spills happen every day to this day. It wasn't just one oil spill. It's decades of oil spills into the environment, into Indigenous and communities' lands. It's this crude across the northern Ecuadorian Amazon has already damaged so much And there are massive operations. Not only were Chevron drilled, but also in the Yasuni National Park, which is the most biodiverse part of the entire Amazon rainforest. There's oil drilling there. And where does that oil go? Some of it stays in Ecuador, and over 50% of what is exported comes to California, comes to Los Angeles, comes to the Bay Area. So the oil is being extracted in the Amazon. It's being shipped across the oceans to California, also to Texas and Louisiana, but primarily California. And it's being shipped to refineries where Black and brown people live and are being polluted. And this is a vicious cycle of our dependency on fossil fuels and Amazon crude. So we are taking action. We are, of course, standing with the peoples on the ground, but we're also standing with the communities here in California that are next to the refineries and saying, stop this expansion. Stop this expansion of continued drilling in the Amazon. Stop this expansion of Amazon crude coming to refineries in California. Stop expanding extraction from California to the Amazon. We're calling on the state of California to make a commitment to not bring in any more Amazon crude, to not support this expansion. And we're also calling on the state of California to stop expanding fracking and any other form of oil extraction in the state of California, to set an example, because Governor Newsom and the state of California like to proclaim that we are climate leaders. But to be a real climate leader, and in order to really reduce emissions, we need to get off Amazon crude. And we need to fast track our just transition to renewable energy, to more local and diverse energy and transportation. And we need to call on those banks to stop financing this destruction. So if you go to our website at amazonwatch.org, there is a button that you can push to take action, and we have petitions. We have actions you can take to end Amazon crude. We have actions you can take to hold the Brazilian government accountable, to stand with Indigenous defenders across the Amazon. We have petitions to call on these financial actors to stop funding the destruction of the Amazon rainforest. So we have many ways that you can take action. You can sign those actions there, and you can support our work. For us to do our work every day, to stand with communities, both on the ground in the Amazon. We have field teams in Ecuador and in Peru and in Brazil. We are on the ground with Indigenous peoples and supporting their efforts, their resistance, their solutions. We are with them. We also do our advocacy work, our campaigns, to call on those that are complicit in the destruction of the Amazon to be accountable. And then, we do this kind of work, to communicate and amplify this work around the world. And so we also encourage you to support us by contributing and donating to our work as well, if you're so moved and inspired to support this work.
Especially here in the States and perhaps also in Europe, a lot of focus is on the Middle East with oil, right? And maybe even the Caribbean a bit with the oil spills from tankers. But we don't get a lot of press or a lot of information coming from Amazon oil. And I did not know we took that much oil into the United States, specifically into California. Like, that was just astounding to hear that. And so just for those who are listening, right, is that we're being shown a lot of information when it comes to an oil crisis or an oil shortage from Russia right now, obviously, and then from the Middle East. But it's also a divergent to not paying attention to what's going on with the Amazon oil and crude oil. And so I feel like that's a really good thing to highlight, is to, when we see these images and we hear these words, Middle East and Russian oil, the question should also be what's going on with the Amazon and what's going on with the crude oil there, right? And what's happening with the indigenous cultures and the locals in those areas. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there for our audience to really consider when they see these headlines.
I know that we have to wrap up. I'm going to turn this over to Anastasia, but I just wanted to get on my soapbox for a second there and encourage people, hey, get active with Amazon Watch. Learn, figure out what to do that you can do, because this is really not optional anymore. We really have to do things now. We have to learn. We have to stop treating it like business as usual, not only in our own lives, but also the companies that we're dealing with, who we choose to bank with, right? Who we choose to buy gas from or petrol or whatever. All these little decisions that we're making, where we buy our food from, all little things that we are doing. And also people want to do more. That's what GoodViral always says, right? Is that we believe people can and want to do more. I know that our listeners believe that too. We can do more. So how? Educate yourself, get involved, be active with Amazon Watch, right?
If I could just leave you with wrap up with something more hopeful and just say that, I did mention that the scientists said that, we have about 3 years to turn things around. The indigenous peoples of the Amazon believe the same, and believe that we can turn things around. We still have time. We are reaching the tipping point. We have reached the tipping point in parts of the Amazon, and other parts we are reaching it if we continue on this path. But if we can get support for protecting 80% of the Amazon rainforest by 2025, that will make all the difference. And so we need your support to get governments, corporations, financial actors to support the call to protect 80% of the Amazon by 2025. And so I also put in this link to this global call by indigenous peoples to protect the Amazon. And, to protect the Amazon, again, is to protect our climate. And we need to stand with indigenous peoples who are protecting and defending the forest for all of us. We still have time. So keep the hope alive, but we need to take urgent action now.
Yes. Thank you for the optimistic note. The reality is in my heart of heart, I don't really believe that the whole world's going to change in 3 years to get this done. However, we have no choice. And so whether we screw it up or not, we still are going to have to do what we can do. So let's do what we can do. Let's give it a shot. Let's take the effort. Let's take the action. Do what we can while we can. And just consider it to be part of our life. It's part of our responsibility of living here. Just like we have to clean up our room, we have to do the same thing for our beautiful planet where we live in, right? So thanks for that note of optimism, because it's tough to think about these things, but the reality is that it's not really somewhere in the distant in a distant continent, right? It's for me here in Spain, for Anastasia in Colorado, for you in San Francisco, and for everybody in the world listening right now. This is affecting where you live. This is affecting your world and your life right there. And so act like it.
Thank you for listening to the GoodViral podcast and being part of the conversation. If you are inspired by this episode, go to our website at goodviral.org, where you can find resources and listings from the episode to continue good efforts.
Like, comment, and share this episode to any or all of your social media channels. It's really easy to take a small action, and maybe you'll inspire a big result.
When good goes viral, the world gets better.